In this video, I'm going to be covering the laws of sowing and reaping within the markets, the core principles that applies to both your everyday life and your trading. Now, just think about it. The earth doesn't question the seed that has been planted, right? It simply just responds to it. The same way, the market doesn't question your emotions, your impatience, or your preparation, right? It responds to what you continually sow into it. So, just to tie this back to scripture very quickly, in Galatians 6:7, it says, "Do not be deceived, God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." That means the outcomes are never actually random. They are reflections of what have been consistently planted over time. Now, in the market, that principle holds true every single day. You can't sow recklessness and then expect to have stability. Neither can you sow doubt and expect confidence to suddenly appear both internally and while you're watching the screen while trading. So, what you put into the market, whether that is mentally, emotionally, strategically, it will ultimately become your harvest, right? Now, this principle, sowing and reaping, right? It's not just about planting a financial seed, but it's about understanding that every action, every trade, and every choice that you make is equivalent to a seed. And the market, see, the market is the field that actually responds to that seed that has been planted. For some of you, you ever notice how a trader who rushes trades, you got to think about those traders who force entries, maybe out of boredom, right? They will often reap frustration, right? And that's not bad luck. Many of them would think that they have bad luck, but it's just the harvest of what they planted in the first place. And that's simply the market returning what has been sown, which is in this case, impatience. Now, on the other hand, right, the trader who actually stays patient, who, let's say, studies, refines, journals, and moves only when the alignment is clear for them to do so, that trader is actually going to reap confidence and growth over time. And that's just simply that law in motion, right? So today, as I go through these slides, I want you to remember that you're not here to chase the market, but actually here to understand it through the principle. Because when you understand the principle, you stop reacting emotionally and start responding intentionally overall as a trader. And that is where your real power begins to actually accumulate. Now, this is the principle of sowing and reaping in the market, and is probably one of the most important foundations that you can possibly build for your long-term success as a trader. So now, very quickly, right, I'm going to dig pretty much deeper, a little bit deeper into Galatians 6:7 through 10. And it says, right, do not be deceived, because God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please the flesh will reap destruction. And whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. And therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, etc., etc. Right now, if you're first hearing that, it sounds very spiritual, but the principle is universal. It applies to the market just as much as it does to your everyday life. Every trade that you place, every habit that you develop and have within you internally already, every decision that you make is ultimately, whether that's in preparation or in execution, is still a seed. And the market will simply mirror that seed perfectly. Let me give you an example, right? Let's say like I said before, you're impatient. You see a setup that hasn't fully formed yet, right? But then you force that entry because you're afraid of missing out. That's showing impatience and recklessness. Now, guess what? The market is going to respond with friction in return because you're going to get those stop outs, you're going to get losses, and you're going to get doubt within yourself. And that is the harvest that you planted in the first place. So let's contrast that to a trader who actually takes time to confirm the trend that they're seeing, right? They check the higher time frames and they make sure it is in alignment with the lower time frame that they're observing as well. They ensure that the liquidity is aligned so that when they enter the market, it actually begins to flow in the direction that they anticipated in the first place. And then, finally, they actually wait for confirmation, right? That trader, what they just sold was patience, discipline, and alignment. And so over time, the market is going to respond with them receiving consistent wins. It's going to give them clarity, confidence, and they're going to be able to enter the flow state when it comes to the trading. And once you enter that flow state, that's like the ultimate state of perfection that you could possibly be as a trader when it comes to your mind and your actions that you're actually taking that's following suit, right? And so what that's going to yield you is the fruit of planting the right seed, was going to lead to consistency and growth over time. Now let's piggyback off of verse 10 for a quick second. And it says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up, right? What this will actually translates to is your stewardship and how you manage your account, your capital, and your risk. So doing good with what's already in your hands is considered planting seeds for greater results tomorrow or at a later time in the future. So what I want everyone to actually do is slow down and ask themselves, are they planting seeds of care or chaos and destruction, preparation or panic? Because the market, just like in real life, will give back exactly what you've been planting, right? Now, let's tie this into kingdom principles, right? Every act in the market is a seed. And so if you are sowing patience, you're going to get clarity, right? If you are sowing greed, on the other hand, you're going to get confusion. And if you're sowing consistency, you're going to get freedom. And since we're trading in the market, that freedom is financial freedom. And with that, you could do whatever you like. Now, what's very important to remember is that every habit, mindset, and trade acts as a seed that you plant for the future. And the harvest is what's going to follow that seed. Most traders think, let's just bring this to an example, right? Most traders think if I just, for some of them, if I just wish hard enough, take a trade out of impulse just because they see it moving in a certain direction, they just take that trade, they're going to get the right results. But that's actually not sowing anything, right? The market doesn't respond to any hopes, and it doesn't respond to what you actually, it actually responds to what you planted in your behavior, your discipline, and your preparation in the market overall before even entering the trade, right? So I got two examples. Example one, a trader jumps into trades impulsively, right? They see a setup forming and then immediately they hit the button without even confirming the structure, the liquidity, or the context of the market, right? So what they're actually doing is they're sowing impatience and impulsiveness. And over time, their account is going to reflect exactly that, which is going to be in the return of losses, frustration, and self-doubt. Now, let's go to example number two. Compare that to now a trader who journals every session, right? They're reviewing their prior trades before taking a new one, and they follow a consistent risk management routine, right? Let's say they take maybe 1 to 2 trades per day maximum, and they keep themselves at that limit. They're actually showing discipline and preparation, and over the course of days, weeks, months, and even years, those habits are going to actually compound, and what they're going to get in return is clarity, confidence, and consistent growth. And that's exactly what you want as a trader, because you want to be in it for the long run, right? You don't want to just be the trader who's in and out, won one trade and then lost it all in the next. So what I want you to do is actually think about your own habits that you have placed for yourself, or that you have made for yourself this week, right? Think of it like, what seeds have I been planting? And are they seeds of frustration, greed, doubt, or fear? Or are they seeds of patience, discipline, preparation, and ultimately alignment, right? I have a quick analogy that's like, planting is just like gardening, right? You can't throw seeds randomly on any dirt and then just expect for that seed to actually grow. What you have to do is you got to actually cultivate the soil, prepare it, water it consistently, even when you don't see anything yet. And let's say there might be weeds growing, you got to remove the weeds now, and you got to nurture each plant that's actually beginning to grow. Trading works the exact same way. You have to take those daily deliberate care that's going to produce growth when it comes to yourself and the market. So another thing to remember is that the harvest never arrives immediately, right? A lot of traders, they sort of fall into this mistake that just because they're making money, they're actually compounding their account correctly. But no, more often than not, those same traders are the same ones who lose it all another day, whether it's a week from now, a month, or even a year. It all comes down to the seed that they were planting, right? So if you were never planting seeds of risk management, for example, you're never going to compound your account consistently over time in the first place. So impulsive traders actually quit oftenly right before the crop is ready, right before they reach that higher step, right before they actually level up, either mentally or financially, right? The market actually rewards cultivation, not panic, doubt, fear, or impulsiveness. So if you haven't already, write down one habit that you've been neglecting so far, right? So, and make that one seed, and think about one seed that you need to start planting consistency from today, that's going to yield into long-term growth in the future, and in your trading account. So, like I was just saying, right? The market is going to mirror what you consistently plant over time. Outcomes are normally not random, because they are the natural fruit of repeated choices over time. Now, let's say a trader who is news driven, right? They sort of like to chase those volatile moments in the market. And those moves normally comes with extra volatility, like I just said, and stress, because normally they're over risking. And so that account is actually going to suffer because of emotional reaction that in the market, and that's the seed that they planted by being that type of trader who actually is over trading volatile news, and risking too much that their account can actually hold, and that their emotions is even capable of withstanding, to the point that they're no longer in a state of clarity, but now in fear. And if you're in fear, why trade in the first place? Many traders are making this exact mistake. So let's contrast that to, let's say, a trader who studies market structure, right? They identify the key liquidity areas before they actually take in the trade. And more importantly, they're waiting for alignment before their entries. What they're actually beginning to sow for themselves is seeds of patience, discipline, and strategic execution. And what they're going to benefit from is their account now is going to grow steadily because of their increased confidence that has been strengthened from those seeds of growth that they have actually been planting. So what I want you to do, if you've already been trading, is think about your last 5 trades that you actually took in the market, right? Which type of seed did they actually represent for yourself as a trader, and what was the outcomes that you got from that seed being planted as well, right? Was it a seed of, for example, impulsiveness, or was it a seed of discipline, right? Was it fear driven, or was it patience driven and actually taken from a state of a calm mind and being in alignment to what you see in the market that ultimately gave you that extra conviction to enter the trade in the first place, right? And don't just think about it, write it down. Just to give a very quick story to elaborate further on what I just said, right? Let's go into a story of, let's say, a farmer who plants, let's say, maybe corn, right? They scatter those corn seeds randomly, most fall or most fail, and plant carefully. What they should be doing is planting carefully, watering consistently, removing any pests that might be growing in the market. And what they're going to see is that that crop is going to actually thrive, and trading habits are the exact same way. Every action is a seed. And so your core focus should be, what is it that you're planting daily, both in your daily life and in the market when you're trading? Because the market doesn't cheat you, it returns what it is that you have sown into it in the first place. So simply put, right, your account is only a reflection of your daily discipline, nothing more, nothing less. Now, some of you might be thinking, how do you really actually apply these principles, right? You treat, as a trader, you treat your daily habits as you would treat your trading portfolio, right? With discipline, patience, and small consistent wins that ultimately compound into lasting harvest, which was equal long-term success over time. And so another way to think of it is, reckless trades are sort of seeds of a loss, right? And they're anticipated and calculated trades, on the other hand, are that seed of freedom. So to dive a little bit deeper into that, right? Every pre-market routine that you have for yourself, every journal entry that you took the time to actually write down and soak in and learn from, and every small check on alignment, when it comes internally to whether or not you're entering from a place of being calm, place of being fearful, maybe you're extra emotional in the moment and it got the best of you, right? So now let's think about the things on the other end: discipline, patience, small consistent wins that compound into a lasting harvest. Now, the primary difference between a trader taking 1 to 2 trades and versus the trader who takes 10 to 15, out of acting out of impulses, right? So that compounding effect is going to be way more consistent, disciplined, and the trading that they're going to get, the return that they're going to get on their trading is going to be way more massive, right? Now, let's say you have another trader who overtrades, like I was just saying, the trader who takes 10 to 15 impulsive trades. Most of those trades were probably reactive. They were out of stress. Um, they were due to trying to capitalize on increased volatility without preparation. Less and all of that, all the only thing that that's going to do is completely kill your confidence, right? Because all you were doing this whole time was planting seeds of chaos, doubt, and fear. Now, those reckless moves that that trader actually did, like I said, are seeds of ultimately loss, right? They're losing constantly, which is leading to that fear in the first place. Now, if that trader had practiced more so something like steady stewardship, what they're actually going to get is that seed of freedom that I spoke of in the slide in the first place, right? So when you're actually acting out of a state of stewardship, you're managing your risks, you're managing your capital, you are managing your mindset when it comes to entering a trade, and you're avoiding the impulsive trades in the first place, right? And so now you're going to get those predictable, let's say, just for lack of a better word, consequences, but that lead to success instead of failure in the long run. So if you someone who traded recently, just think about your last session that you traded, right? Which trader were you today? Or which trader were you that day? And write it down, because awareness is the first step to actually changing your harvest and changing the fruit within your life to a more fruitful one of success. So another analogy is that compound interest in those tiny deposits that you make daily, whether in the market or to your actual self, because they're both one and the same, right? That actually is going to equal long-term wealth the same way with your trading, because each action is going to compound, and that compound is going to lead to an advantage and an edge in the market that you have specifically for yourself, because you know that you're acting out of alignment, and from that alignment you can only grow, right? Even if you take a loss out of alignment, that loss then just becomes a lesson and not actually a loss, because you learn from it, you gain the wisdom and understanding that you needed, and then you still move forward in a, let's say, like a slingshot like formation, right? So to elaborate further on reflection, because reflection in the market is one of the most important things you can possibly do, right? So how have you been trading today, right? Is it been impatience or discipline trades? Have you been trading out of fear or trading out of faith and alignment and clarity, and which is ultimately going to lead to you having further conviction in yourself along the run, along the way, right? So if you're that trader, you got to be honest with yourself, because if you're not honest with yourself, you're never going to grow. So if you've been that trader who's been reacting emotionally, all you're doing is planting frustration, and then that frustration is actually compounding stress, and that stress is going to compound even further into losses, right? So what you should do, for example, is take a step back, review those trades, and then wait for an alignment and for you to actually have conviction in yourself before placing the next one. Because then what you're finally going to do is start planting seeds of clarity, composure, and confidence. And what that's going to do is build your resilience in the long run, because you know that you did all you can and you controlled what you the only thing that you can control in the market, which is yourself. Right now, a another very quick story that I'm gonna say, because I want to keep the same formula so that it begins to click. Right, a gardener who, let's say, are pruning dead leaves from a plant, right? What that actually going The reason that that gardener is doing that is to ensure a stronger harvest. Right now, in trading, reviewing losses reviewing losses and adjusting behavior is what's considered as pruning as a trader, which is going to then allow you to have growth. One of the worst things you can do as a trader when you take a loss is blame the market, because if you blame the market, you're not taking any accountability, which means that you're going to also reflect that same thing the next time that you trade, and it's going to plant that seed of lack of accountability. And if you have no accountability as a trader, then are you even really trading, right? Because at that point, you're really just gambling. So if you want to actually start having a different fruit as a trader, then you have to start planting different seeds. So change the small daily things first, then the harvest will follow in both your life and your trading. So what you want to do is to make a quick shift from impulsive to aligned trades, right? And then compound that consistency in days, weeks, months, and over time, it should compound into years. And so the way to achieve that is by journaling, like I said before, by reviewing your losses. Because if you review your loss, that loss is never a loss. It only becomes a lesson. And from a lesson, you get growth, right? You also want to, this is also like a slept on one, you also want to practice mindfulness in the market. Because if you practice your mindfulness, you want to practice that mindfulness before entering the market, I should say, because then what that's actually going to do is allow you to have more clarity, allow you to have more awareness, and allow you to actually act from a place of, like I was saying before, alignment, which is very important in your trading journey, because then you're planting seeds of insight and of, let's say, composure, right? And then what that's going to do is lead to you being more mentally and financially stronger over the course of months. So what I want you to do is actually, before your next trading session, ask yourself, which seed am I going to plant today, right? Obviously, it shouldn't be a seed of fear, impatience, or reaction or doubt. So you want to start planting seeds of patience, discipline, clarity. Also, one of the most important seeds that you can possibly plant is conviction and precision in the market. Because the more confident you are in yourself, you know, the more likely you are to succeed. And that goes not only with trading, but with anything in life, right? So don't only just think about it though, but actually take the time, write it down, and then let whatever you wrote down guide you in your next trade, right? And guide you in your next approach to the market. And even if you haven't been trading, allow that to guide you in the sense of direction as far as what you should be doing when it comes to entering the market, if you're planning to enter the market but haven't yet done it, right? So your daily actions, those seeds, those habits, and your mindset that you have is going to be returned right back to you in the market's harvest over time. So what you actually want to do is you want to plant wisely, cultivate discipline, and then watch your results transform your life both in trading and in the markets. That's going to be the end of this video. Make sure to leave a like, share, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.